All right, guys, welcome back to Baylee's Bleacher. Today we're going to talk about the NFL wildcard games, and today we have a very special guest. So today I'm here with Kylie Montigney from the NEPA Story podcast. So Kylie, welcome to Baylee's Bleacher.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited. It's been honestly a hot minute since I talked sports to anyone, so I'm super excited to chat with you.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to have you on. So usually I just start going right into my show, and please excuse my voice, I'm still sick. Um, but let's talk about you for a second. So when did your love for sports start?
Yeah, so I honestly loved sports since I was a little kid. I grew up playing sports, baseball, basketball, swimming for a hot minute. It didn't last very long, but my whole personality growing up was baseball. I come from a very small town here, of course, in Pennsylvania, as you know, we're well, a very small town, Pennsylvanians down here in NEPA, and so basically my family is big sports fans. So of course, I obviously had to be a sports fan. That's all,
Right.
what everyone knew. And so, obviously, with growing up playing sports, of course, my brother, he plays baseball, so does his day at 17 years old. And so, of course, I spent all my time at a baseball field. So it was
Right.
honestly what I did. Like on my free time was at a baseball field besides school. And so, but the reason that like kind of got me into sports was obviously coming from a sports family. I watch everything: football, basketball, baseball, hockey, anything. I'm a
Right.
person that loves to watch any sport of any kind. There's nothing specific that I hate about sport. But it wasn't until about, I think, 2017, and I was at a Phillies game. My family's big Phillies fans, of course,
Right.
and so basically, we went to a Dodgers Phillies game, and
Oh,
when it was
cool.
Chase Utley's final homestand before he retired, and of course, my mom ended up getting tickets from her work, so we ended up going to the game. And I'm not like back then, I was never like a baseball watcher. Of course, I would watch it
Right.
when my parents are watching it. I would just sit there and watch, but I would never be like, okay, I need to just turn this game on at so and so time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I would just watch it just to watch it. And so when I went to that game, of course, my family, especially my brother, loves Chase Utley since he's named after him. Since of course my family's diehard Phillies fans, and so of course when I went to that game, I don't know what hit me, but I immediately became a Chase Utley fanatic after that game. And that game was a game where it went to 18 innings, and it was done around I think like 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in
Oh,
the morning.
wow.
So it was a pretty late game. We stayed for the whole game. We didn't leave,
Oh
and
boy.
the Phillies ended up walking off. Thank you, God, they did. But yeah, so like after that game, like something kind of clicked, and I became a Chase Utley fanatic. Watched every game. I had to be home at a certain time to watch the game to see Chase Utley play. But he wasn't a full-time player. He's not like one to like at that point in his career, he wasn't a big player that he has an everyday role. And so
Right.
I was like, I need to go home because if I miss Chase Utley, I'm going to lose my mind. And so, ever since then, yeah, since my Chase Utley obsession started back in 2017, obviously he's retired now.
Right.
He's in the Hall of Fame ballot, which I hope he gets. And since ever since then, I became a diehard like baseball fan. I'm a Dodger fan now because of Chase Utley. Of course, I'm still a Philly fan.
Right, always.
No hating to Phillies fans out there. Don't No hate for them, but now a Dodger fan because of Chase Utley. Still am to this day, and yeah, it really was because of Chase Utley that really kind of got me into like a little bit of sports, especially baseball.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I played sports my whole life with my siblings. I have an older brother, younger sister. Played sports forever, kind of was born into liking the Steelers and the Phillies and the Flyers. So everything's like Philly except for like football, then it's Steelers. I don't know why, you'll have to ask my dad sometime. But so yeah, me too. So grew up around sports, playing sports, and then when I got to college, I played sports. And then my senior year, I didn't get to play because I had some health stuff going on. And so then I was kind of able to get more into like talking about sports. And I did all throughout college, but like that's when like the passion for it kind of came out. So that was kind of cool. So both of us are qualified to talk about sports, right?
Yeah, like obviously, of course, we're from being Pennsylvania, you have to be like a Philly or a Pittsburgh sports fan.
Right.
But for me, I'm only a Philly fan. All of the rest of the teams I like are out of state or in the West Coast. I'm
Oh, okay, yeah.
so like what is like for example, of course I like of course Penn State as well. I'm a Penn State fan too, but all the teams I like are the West Coast, like the Lakers, Seahawks, Dodgers, like all the teams I
Right.
like are on the West Coast besides the Phillies and Penn State. So it don't like because a lot of people ask me why are you a like a West Coast person like sports. I'm like I never thought of that, but I don't think I ever will
Right, it's just kind
personally.
of
But
there.
just leave it
Yeah.
there.
No, that's awesome. So then let's get into the wild card games because that's what we're here to talk about.
Mhm.
Um, so they were wild for sure. I don't know if you were able to catch any of them or see any highlights or anything. So there were two games on the 13th between the Browns and the Texans, and then the Chiefs and the Dolphins. So in the Texans game, they won 45-14, and they had rookie quarterback out of Ohio State, CJ
Mhm.
Stroud. He had an incredible playoff game debut. He threw for 247 yards and three touchdowns.
Mhm.
So, yeah, rookie season, that's very impressive, right?
Yeah, like better than most of the college players in the first playoff games I've seen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he didn't choke, nothing. Like, he just played really well, so that was cool. So then the Texans had a 24-14 lead going into halftime. And then in the second half, Steven Nelson and Christian Harris returned two touchdowns off of interceptions. So that was nice for them. And they were both like pretty long returns. And then that put them up 38-14.
I know. And that kind of reminds me of like the Washington and Texas game, the championship game a little bit reminds me of
Yeah,
what that game.
so it was kind of like happening all over again, right?
Yeah, it was flashbacks of like maybe like a 2 week span.
Yeah, and then Devin Singletary, he ended the scoring for the Texans with a 19-yard touchdown run into the end zone. So, like, do you have any other thoughts on the game then? Like, what did you think?
Like honestly thought that was a crazy game. Like of course a lot of things of course went on. Like of course, what a playoff games, it's always so exciting to see who's going to go to the Super Bowl. Of course it's
Yeah,
very different from previous years. Of course, this is the first like playoff game in a while since like this is first season, well, playoff season that is not with Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, which is crazy.
right.
But to have, that game and so many things like happening, like fumbles, touchdowns, like this kind of like a mid-high scoring, low scoring
Yeah,
game. It was very kind of interesting to see. I was watching the highlights. I'm like, what is happening? I was confused. I'm like, what
I
is going
know.
on? Like, what is going on? But it really it kind of gives me the hope of who is actually going to make this Super Bowl and who's going to win. Because of course, there's so many options like the Chiefs, the Lions. Of course, it's a first time they won a playoff game since I think 30 years. I read something about.
Yeah.
Oh, this is honestly very exciting. Of course, with the Lions, see where they're going this week. But yeah, it was honestly just a very crazy game to see and very trying to keep track of what's going on.
Right. I kept getting little notifications on my phone, like the ESPN app, and I'm like, wait, what just happened?
I know.
But yeah, it was nuts. So then with the Chiefs and Dolphins game, I have a lot of
Mhm.
thoughts on that one. I'm sure you
Yeah.
probably do too. So the Dolphins, they play in Miami and it's hot. We know that.
Yeah.
And then the Chiefs are just so used to these cold winters, right?
Mhm.
But this game in general was insanely cold. It was literally a record low temperature of -4 degrees at Arrowhead
Mhm.
Stadium. And I just don't really think they should have played that game in
I
general.
know.
Yeah, like whether you're used to the cold or not, because in my brain, like when I was playing softball in college or high school, whatever, it was like, to me, what I thought of was when you swing a softball bat in the cold, how bad it stings your hands. And then you go to a
Oh, yeah.
contact, yeah, then you go to a contact sport and you're hitting each other's bodies. Like, I just can't, like, that just sounds painful to me. And then you
Mhm.
try to catch a ball and when you can't feel your hands, like, no, 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 thank you. And then,
Mhm.
I just really think that the cold weather affected the Dolphins' playing abilities. I mean, literally, even Patrick Mahomes' helmet cracked, and then Andy
Oh,
Reid's
yeah.
mustache was frozen.
Yeah, I did
So,
see that. That was so weird. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I was so confused on why they played in that weather. Like, I'm like, how are they not freezing or get frostbite? Because I know I read something that a lot of fans were hospitalized due to frostbite and stuff like
Oh,
that.
really? I didn't even see that. Ugh.
Yeah, there were a
Yeah.
couple of fans that went to the hospital after that game and like with frostbite and like with things. I'm like, why on earth did people go to that game or even play
Yeah.
that in general is the question.
Exactly. And so there's like that little controversy over that. Like, should they have played? Would it affected the outcome of the game?
Yeah, it definitely did. It kind of reminds me of like the Buffalo game with them canceling because of the amount of snow they got. I was
Hmm.
listening to it on the radio on the way to go somewhere, and every time they score a touchdown, Bills fans are throwing the snow on the field. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Like, why? I understand that it was everything. I don't care about the Bills game. That was fine. Everything was fine. But like the Dolphins game is a question that kind of keeps bugging in my brain right now.
Right, because it's not to say like, oh, if the weather was perfect out, like that the Dolphins would have won, but it definitely affects their playing abilities for sure.
Yeah, definitely did. Like, I know for me, if I was in a freezing weather like that, I'd be like, I'm not playing this game. I'm going to
Right.
do horrible. Like, I
And
know how
like,
they did it.
yeah, and they make enough money, they could probably do without it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right? And of course, Taylor Swift was at that game as well.
Yep.
So of course, whenever she's at a game, the Chiefs are always going to play well in front of her, right?
Right. Yeah, I actually saw in the ESPN write-up that they had, it literally mentioned like, oh, Taylor Swift was there, but she wasn't as cold as everyone else because she was in a box. And I'm like, of course they had to throw that in there.
I know, right? Of course, like every time like Taylor Swift is at a game, they always had to make her the biggest star on a thing. And
Right.
and literally when I was watching the Emmys a few days back, they literally poked her about not being shown at the Emmys or cameras around as much at football games as to compared to Emmys. I'm like, at
I
least
saw
someone,
that.
at
Yeah.
least someone said it.
I was thinking it, but
Yeah, I was thinking it too. I'm like, thank
right.
you so much for saying that because I would never have the guts.
No, right? So anyway, that game, the Chiefs won 26-7, right? And the Dolphins' only touchdown was a 53-yard touchdown pass from Tua to Tyreek Hill in the second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scoring for the Chiefs included an 11-yard pass from Mahomes to Rashee Rice, and then 4 field goals actually by Harrison Butker, and then a 3-yard run from Isaiah Pacheco. So a lot of action there for the kicker Harris Butker. So
Oh yeah, it seems like it for a little cold game though, but
yeah, I'm
kickers I usually have the quickest, easiest job on the field, so who
right.
can blame
So
'em?
so I mean that was a good game. I think the Chiefs were gonna win that regardless, but
Yeah.
again, like we never know. So the cold could have
Yeah.
changed it. Who knows?
Yeah, honestly, that's the same thing. Of course, with the Dolphins, they're like, of course, with the Chiefs, they have good defense, a good quarterback, good
Yep.
offense. But with the Dolphins, like they haven't made the playoffs in a long time, or even like played as good as the Chiefs. Of course, with Tua, he's still up and coming. He's still new. So of course, with the Dolphins, they're not as good with the offense and defense as compared to the Chiefs. So it wasn't
Hmm.
as surprising that the Chiefs won when I was watching the game. Of course, because of course they have Travis Kelce, they have a bunch of good players that like you kind of knew it was kind of going to be a blowout with the Dolphins with their defense and not being home.
Right, exactly. So then the next games on the 14th, the Packers played the Cowboys and the Rams faced the Lions. So the
Hmm.
Packers beat the Cowboys 48-32, which
Hmm.
was a shock to fans, not necessarily that the Cowboys lost, but how badly they lost.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, and so Aaron Jones led the Packers with 3 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Jordan Love threw 3 touchdowns in his first postseason debut as well. And then Darnell Savage had a 64-yard interception return for a touchdown. So again, really good offense by the Packers.
Hmm.
And then the flop, there was definitely a flop for Dak Prescott and the
Oh, what is
Cowboys.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, he had 2 interceptions, so that's off the bat not good, right?
Mm.
But he only completed 41 of his 60 passes, and I feel like 60 is a pretty high number anyway, regardless. But to only complete 41 of those is pretty like not unheard of, but like for him, I feel like not great stat, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
Yeah, and you have to give the Cowboys some props because they did come back from 27-0, but it was too late.
Wrong. Like they, of course, with the Cowboys, they didn't come back enough to actually win the game. It would be different if it was like the first or second quarter, but they came at the wrong moment, third or fourth quarter, and of course, once they start scoring, you're like, okay, the Cowboys are gonna lose. Like, yeah, I can already tell you this now. Dak Prescott's getting killed. Like, you can
Yep.
just see it early on in the first quarter.
Right. So it definitely was interesting in the fact that, like, the score was higher than everyone had thought, but not interesting that they lost. So,
Yeah, it was not surprising after watching about 15 minutes at first of the beginning of the game. I was like, this is not interesting to me for some reason. I've turned this off. Because of
right.
course I kind of do not like the Cowboys, so I'm like that was part of the reason. So I'm like, I'm just not wasting my time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I literally turned it on for like maybe 5-10 minutes and I was already over it. I'm like, I'm not watching this. There's no point. We already know how it's gonna turn out.
Yeah, and I was like, is it actually the same ritual the Cowboys going like getting killed? Because of course they're gonna do good this season, go to the playoffs and lose the first game or get killed. That's like the
Right.
same ritual each year.
You said it was a ritual. That's so good.
It's the same
So,
ritual every single year. It's crazy.
yeah, it's just everyone's used to it by now.
Yeah, right?
So then the Lions game was exciting for Detroit fans. Like you said earlier, it was their first playoff win in 32 years.
Hmm.
So big deal, right? The Lions beat the Rams 24-23, so super close game. Um, so quarterback Jared Goff ended the game with one touchdown pass and went 22 for 27 passing, which is very accurate, right?
Yeah.
So then David Montgomery, he opened up the scoring with a 1-yard run into the end zone for the Lions. And then Jamar Gibbs added a 10-yard run for the Lions later on in the game. So then Sam Laporta caught a 2-yard pass for a touchdown. And then Michael Bagley hit a 54-yard field goal to cap off the scoring for Detroit. So they were scoring, blah, blah, blah. And then in the fourth quarter, the Rams hit a 29-yard field goal. And this made the score 24-23 with the Lions up by 1. So there's a chance, like you never know what's going to happen in the final few minutes of the game. But the Lions were able to keep the ball. They got to the 2-minute warning, and then they let the clock run out for the win. So what do you think about that one?
That was honestly a crazy game, 24-23. Of course, you never expected what's going to happen in final moment. And honestly, thought something was going to happen in probably the final minute or two. But then, like, once the Lions took the final two knees, I'm like, gosh, thank you. Like,
Yeah, right.
God. But it was really nerve-wracking to watch
Yep.
that game. Of course, it was so close. I know a lot of Lions fans were rooting for them. Of course, fans across the NFL wanted the Lions to win to kind of break, the routine of not making to the playoffs in 32 years or get
Hmm.
their first win. So of course, it was a great like game to watch. But it was honestly very nerve-wracking to see, okay, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna score? Because honestly, when I was watching that game, I'm like, oh, I feel like something's gonna happen since it's a close game. That
Right.
something's gonna happen in the last couple of minutes that no one's gonna expect at all. And thankfully that didn't happen. So who knows what's gonna happen for the Lions next game. But it was a very great but nerve-wracking game though. But it was a very, like great game and it
Hmm.
was a great game for the Lions though.
No, it really wasn't. I just can't imagine like that pressure of like 32 years of not making it into the playoffs, right? Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine like the weight on your shoulders just lifted when you actually like get there? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
like I'm
nuts.
sure the head coach and the quarterback are like, okay, this is on me. If I don't win
Yeah,
this game, then I'm gonna be disowned by the fans or even to myself. Like I'm
right.
never.
And yeah, and you have to give props to the defense too, because you got to think about that situation. It's a tight game basically the whole time. You got to be pretty perfect to make sure that you guys get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and obviously the offense, of course, we're
Hmm.
making touchdowns. Of course, like thankfully they at least scored 24 points. So,
Yeah.
but like it was a great game for the offense as well, scoring,
Hmm.
trying to score as much as possible. I think the offense did pretty good as well. So it was a great game overall for the defense and offense as well with the Lions. But there's still, hopefully they make it a Super Bowl, just so a couple weeks left. But who knows? Maybe they'll make it
Right.
a ritual at the Super Bowl.
Exactly. So then moving on, Monday, on the 15th, the Bills faced the Steelers and the Bucks played the Eagles. So both of these games were a little shocking to me at least.
Mhm.
So the Steelers lost to the Bills 31-17 in a game that, like we talked about earlier, it was actually supposed to be played the game. It was supposed to be played the day before, and they
Mhm.
rescheduled it due to this ridiculous winter storm that everyone's been having, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
But either way, the Steelers lost, which is a little heartbreaking for me. But Bills quarterback Josh Allen, he threw for 3 touchdowns with 203 passing yards. The Bills scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and Pittsburgh didn't score at all, right?
Mhm.
In the second quarter, Josh Allen had a 52-yard run as a quarterback for a touchdown because of some very sloppy Steeler defense. I feel like as a quarterback, like, they do run, they're athletic, whatever, but it's pretty rare for a quarterback to run far, especially 52
Oh.
yards, more than half the field for a touchdown, right? So that just plays into how bad the Steeler defense was.
Like I was surprised when he ran that because of course like a quarterback running 52 yards, that's very rare to see. Of course, when
Right.
like that's an offense's job to run the ball and go
Yep.
for a touchdown, not a quarterback job. Like of course, quarterbacks of course score touchdowns, but they
Yeah,
don't
of course.
really run 52 yards across the whole field. Like that's very
Yeah.
where like little like what's going on, like why is he running, like it just shows how serious offense doesn't really know what to do in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And so then the Steelers, after that happened, they answered with a 10-yard touchdown pass from Mason Rudolph to Deontay Johnson. But then in the third quarter, both teams hit a field goal. That was it. It was 2 field goals, one for each team. And then in the fourth quarter, it started out with a touchdown pass from Rudolph to Calvin Austin the third. But with the Bills up 24-17 already, there was a slim chance for a Steelers win. And then the
Hmm.
Bills made sure there were zero chances as Khalil Shakir caught a 17-yard touchdown pass from Allen to win 31-17.
Which is insane. Like I knew the Bills were like, okay, we need to knock this game out the door. I know a lot of Steelers fans
Right.
are posting like, okay, we're gonna win this game against the Bills. Of course, it was rescheduled again an extra day to kind of
Right.
get through. But once the Bills caught that touchdown, you knew the game was over 100%. Like, of course,
Right.
before that touchdown, a lot of fans were like, okay, Steelers got a chance. We still got this game. But once the touchdown was hit, a lot of fans just shut the game off or like, okay, we're done being Steelers fans. This is done. But of course, the Eagles lost too. So, a
Right.
real tough day for Pennsylvanians.
No, literally.
Your teams lost in the same day, which is, pretty upsetting.
Oh, for sure. But this game, for at least Allen, became the first quarterback in NFL history to throw 3 or more touchdown passes while rushing for 70 more yards. 70 or more yards and score. So again, like that whole 52-yard like touchdown, like pretty unheard of, obviously, if he broke this record, right?
Yeah.
But again, like the Steelers, they just played inconsistently. There were too many mistakes, and they just couldn't even compete at that point. They
Mhm.
had missed tackles and turnovers, and it actually made up for 14 of the 31 Bills points.
And I like, of course, with the game being pushed back, I think, of course, like, I forget, were the Bills home or away? I think they're home, right?
It was home, yeah.
All right, so like of course with the series being away, it takes a lot of time to really be like, okay, not home. Like, of course, a lot of Steelers fans were there, but it was a Bills fan base. Of course, the Bills
Hmm.
got more chance of winning because they're at home. Their fan base packing their base. Of course, the Bills fan base is one of the best fan bases in the NFL. And so with being at the Bills Stadium from having a postponement to a day later, it can damage a lot of, you know focus or discipline to really play next day after being canceled the day before. So of
Right.
course that makes it understandable to not playing as good, but of course having home field advantage and being away also has its advantages. But the Steelers defense has always been a question throughout this year. It wasn't just in the
Yeah.
playoffs though.
Right, exactly. And so then after the Steelers game, we had the final wild card game. It was between the Bucks and the Eagles, and the Bucks crushed the Eagles 32-9.
Mhm.
And Bucks quarterback Baker Mayfield, who has been on 4 different teams in 2 years, might I add, he threw for 337 yards with 3 touchdown passes. So, pretty good there for him. The Eagles' only points came from a second quarter field goal along with a 5-yard pass to Dallas Goedert from Jalen Hurts. So they just really didn't really do anything offensively.
Mhm.
The Bucks defense, they just did not let the Eagles perform. And I don't really have many notes on that game other than the Bucks deserve that win.
Oh, they definitely did. I don't really have notes on that game earlier, like either, but when
Hmm.
watching that game, like the Eagles just did not do good at all. Like you knew
No.
like you're gonna lose that game. They just doing horrible. Like when you watch the Bucks play, you're like, okay, well, of course they're not Tom Brady's not part of the team anymore.
Hmm.
And so with watching the game, we're like, okay, what is wrong with the Eagles? Of course, they won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, but they're not the same as they were when they played the Super Bowl. So when watching that game, it really showed how bad they absolutely looked. And I think like they deserve to lose that game after what
Yeah.
after.
No, I agree. And the Bucks, they had 119 rushing yards, they had 337 receiving yards, and their defense had 49 tackles total with 3 sacks. So how are you gonna go like compete with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Uh,
who you can be with that? Like even if they won, they would still just lose either way. Like they did
yeah.
absolutely horrible. Of course, the Bucks deserve it with 3 tackles, 3 sacks. Like you just knew that the Bucks were just doing really well and just knew like you're gonna win this game, of course. And the Eagles just did not do good at all. And I think speaking from all ES fans, you're like, okay, I give up. Like
Yeah.
when are we gonna have a chance again?
No, exactly. The only thing that I want to mention from that game, besides Bucks and whatnot, the Eagles center Jason Kelsey, he did announce his retirement after 13
Mm.
seasons with Philly. He had a Super Bowl championship, 7 Pro Bowl appearances, and he received 6 first team All Pro awards. So
Mm.
that'll be a big loss for them.
Yeah, like I saw something, like I think, like I saw stuff online, like that. He was doing a podcast with his brother Travis to have a podcast together, and
Hmm.
he said that he kind of never fully announced it. That he
Right.
said, like, oh, like I don't know what to do. Like he didn't officially say, oh, I'm going to retire. Like this is like he didn't say that himself. He just said, like, okay, like I don't know what to do. Like he didn't feel like claims said he did tell the Eagles teammates after the game that he was going to retire, but I guess
Hmm.
like that's not how he was planning on doing it, or he doesn't
Oh,
know.
interesting. Okay, yeah. Because I saw like ESPN had posted it, and so I was just assuming that it was from a credible source, and maybe like he just told someone in like confidence, and it just got out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Of course, with ESPN, everything's true when ESPN posts.
Yeah.
Of course,
Right.
everyone's gonna believe it when big like Bleacher Report or one of those big sports outlets post it. So
Yeah.
I thought it was believable that once he announced himself on the podcast, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, like what's going on here?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I didn't know that, but just for sake of time, let's move on. The divisional round playoff games will begin on January 20th. We will see the Texans and the Ravens in the AFC. And then we will see the Packers and the 49ers in the NFC. And then on the 21st, we'll see the Bucks and the Lions in the NFC and the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC. So then the following week, we have the AFC and NFC championships. So, Kylie, what are your picks for the AFC and NFC championship games?
Ooh, I personally think the Bucks and Lions are gonna probably be going to be in it. Like,
Okay.
wait, who's in the AFC? Totally
So
forgot.
you're fine. So your AFC options are the Texans and the Ravens and the Chiefs and the Bills.
Chiefs and Ravens, I think, are gonna make it for the AFC.
Okay. Okay, Chiefs and Ravens, nice. And then for the NFC, you have the Packers and the 49ers and the Bucks and the Lions.
My pick for an NFC is the Bucks and the 49ers.
Maybe,
That'll be
yeah,
my
Bucks and 49ers. Okay, nice. I have the Ravens and the Bills because I think that the Bills are going to shock everybody and beat the Chiefs. Obviously, who knows, but I don't know.
hmm.
That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. And then I have the 49ers and the Lions. That's what I think my matchups are
Oh,
going to be.
that's a good one. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
We're gonna see next week and see how it goes. But it's gonna be definitely surprising next week and see who's gonna make it to the AFC and NFC.
Right. So I know it's a little bit early, but what are your Super Bowl predictions?
Definitely, probably Buccaneers and Lions.
I'm going with the 49ers and the Ravens. That's what I think it's going to
Ooh,
be
that's a
this
good
year.
one.
Yeah. So, we'll see. You never know. It's football. It's like any sport. I always say you never know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But that is all I have this week for Bailey's Bleacher. Kylie, thank you so much for being on the show. It was so great having you on today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to chat with you about sports. It was such an honor. I know we've been trying to do this for a little bit, so I'm super
Right.
happy we got to do this.
Perfect. All right. Tune in next time, guys, and we'll talk about some more sports.